Today I'm going to show you how I use FlySto to debrief my flights. Disclaimer, I don't work for FlySto. I'm not being compensated by FlySto in any way for this video. I just find this tool to be extremely helpful for me personally, and I do think it helps to make better, safer pilots overall. So that's why I want to share it with you today. So let's jump right into it. So what is FlySto? Well, FlySto is a web-based tool that allows you to upload your avionics data logs into their site and then lets you analyze your flight. Their tagline is flying stories that you can trust. And the reason is because it doesn't rely on whether you remember if it was a good landing or you remember something you did right or wrong during the flight. It will use the actual data from your avionics to tell you precisely how the flight went. So first step is to take your data. So in my plane, I have a Garmin avionics, so I take the data card from that Garmin avionics and I download the CSV file. The way the Garmin avionics work, and I'm pretty sure all the other ones do too, each flight will generate one CSV file. It's a very small file, and you take that file and upload it into FlySto. So let's jump over to the computer and I'm going to show you how to do that. Browser, go to flysto.net. And if you don't have an account, you'll have to set one up, obviously. It's really straightforward and it's free. And once you have your profile set up and your aircraft set up, then you can press the blue Upload Logs button. And the easiest way to do it is just drag and drop your files onto there. And this will upload your file to the FlySto server. It will also figure out what the aircraft it's to, and it ties it to that aircraft. One other thing to note about the upload is you can upload multiple files at a time. So if you have a data card that has tens or even hundreds of flight logs on it, you can upload them all in one shot just by dragging and dropping onto this window. So that's kind of cool. The other thing is the supported avionics. All the major ones are in here, all the Garmin ones, all the Avidynes, the GRTs for some of the experimental guys, the Dynons, the Avidynes, they're all in here. And if you see something that's not on the list, this company has been pretty responsive. So if you email the support at flysto.net, they'll probably find a way to help you out. But after you've uploaded, the next thing is to start looking at the flights. So I have uploaded hundreds of flights into FlySto, and I thought it'd be interesting to show you three specific flights. One is a simple point-to-point flight. One is a training flight that had multiple landings and a whole bunch of funky stuff going on. And one flight had some flight maneuvers in it where I was bored one day and did a couple of 360s while I was in flight. So the first flight I want to show you is a simple point-to-point flight. And this flight is going from Houma, Louisiana over to San Antonio. As you can see, it's a totally straightforward flight, nothing really special or fancy about this. Now, for every flight, FlySto gives you this snapshot, which is the entire flight, and it shows you visualizations, both in 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, or even PFD level. And in each of these visualizations, you can hit play and actually see the flight in real time. So what I've done here is I'm hitting the PFD view and I've hit play at 30x speed. So this shows the climb out, and I'm gonna pause this for a second here. This shows I'm still climbing. I took off on this runway. You see the map inset, and I've made a right turn. This visualization is what the pilot would see from the left seat. The other visualization that's kind of cool is this 2D visualization. And the reason, let me put this to 30x speed, hit play. This visualization shows you even the winds, and it will show you traffic as well as weather along the way. So we're gonna let this run a little bit and maybe bump it up to 60 so it speeds up. So this gives you an overview of the entire flight. Aside from the overview with these visualizations, one other cool thing you could do is you can upload your own flight videos into here. So if you had a camera mounted on your dash pointed straight ahead out the windscreen, you can upload that file here, and FlySto will be smart enough to figure out how to synchronize it to your logs And then this PFD, instead of having stock footage in the background, it will be the actual footage that you took from your camera. So I think that's kind of cool. But these visualizations, this doesn't really help you in terms of debriefing your flight and helping improve your flying capabilities. So the way to do that is to go analyze segments of the flight. So here, if I click on the landing section on the left nav bar here, it will give you an approach score. And on this flight, it was nothing, it was a pretty uneventful flight. And all of the parameters for the approach and landing, I had hit all the numbers within tolerance. And so I've got a score of 100% on this one. Believe me, not all of my landings are 100%, but this one happened to be rated as 100. And the interesting thing is it gives you all of this data here on the left nav bar. So for example, at 500 feet, it checks your descent path angle, it checks your airspeed, your maximum descent rate, your power settings, all of that. These numbers are all in the right ballpark, so that's a good thing. If something wasn't in the right ballpark, it would show up in a different color. So it's pretty easy to see when something's out of whack. Here you can see at 50 feet, my airspeed was 75 knots. During the actual landing, I flared for 5 seconds, which is really quite good. One of the common problems for Cirrus pilots is landing fast and flat. And a good way to help address that is to try to hold your flare for 5 to 8 seconds. So I pay attention to this data point for that reason. The other thing that's interesting, every one of these data blocks that has a little arrow next to it gives you additional data. So it shows you the graph and all the details, which not only shows you your data for this flight, but it also compares to your average for all of your flights that you've uploaded, as well as the average for the entire SR-22 fleet, which is kind of cool. And then lastly, the most important part is the touchdown. So you see here in the touchdown, my touchdown airspeed was 63, which is pretty good. Pitch angle is 7 degrees, which is also pretty good. Impact was low, and this is one that I focus on all the time because as a pilot, you always want to make a soft, smooth landing for your passengers, so I always focus on this impact one. And this one, you can see the actual touchdown was 0.04 Gs. So that's a pretty soft landing. Unfortunately, this crab angle, this is not so good. This shows that I actually landed at touchdown with 4 degrees of crab angle, which is not good because it adds unnecessary side load to your main gear, landing gear. And so this is something that, I'll need to work on. But this is how I dissect a normal flight. Now let's take a look at another flight. This time I want to show you one of my training flights. So recently, on April 5th, I had taken a training flight with a CSIP up in Knoxville, and I really wanted to try my hand at flying the Cirrus from the right seat. And as you can imagine, that was a very awkward experience for me, and it shows in the data. So if I look at that flight, if I look at the overall 2D rendering of it, that flight had a whole bunch of twists and turns and a bunch of landings. And here you see the landing scores are less than perfect. You got a 92 here, a 98, a 96, a 94. These landings had room for improvement. And the interesting thing is that you can actually look at these landings in detail. And so here, this is a landing that I did from the right seat. And you can see here that I must have been a little high on this approach because I hit a descent rate of 1,056 feet per minute in order to get to altitude, which is not so good. The airspeed after this descent, it looks like at 50 feet, I kind of got it under control, got the airspeed right. Then when it came down to the flare, a 2-second flare, which is not long enough. It really should be a little bit better, should have been longer. And then the touchdown airspeed. The airspeed is good, the pitch is good, the impact is good, but look at this crab angle. This is another 5-degree crab angle at touchdown. So once again, this is something I clearly need to work on. It kind of means I need to probably focus on my rudder pedal usage a bit more on my landings. And so this is the kind of stuff you learn from FlySto. You learn what you need to focus on and pay attention to for your next flight. Now let's look at one more. So there was a flight I took back in November of last year where I was heading to Lakeland, probably for some routine maintenance. And along the way, I was kind of bored and did a couple 360s along the way. So if you're ever doing a flight where you're actually doing maneuvers in the air, FlySto also helps you evaluate those maneuvers. So you can look at your flight maneuvers, and you can see here there was a steep turn, steep 360. And if you click in on that, here's the first 360. I did a one to the left first, and this one had a bank angle of 33. Between 33 and 38. The altitude, I gained or lost about 50 feet, or less than 50 feet. And then the indicated airspeed, nothing special there. Slip and skid was low, which means the turn was mostly coordinated. So all these green dots are a good thing. Then I check out the next one. This is the one to the right. Here, bank angle was between 32 and 36. Altitude was within 30 feet on this one. And airspeed was plus or minus 2 knots, and again, the slip and skid is low. This type of data on your maneuvers is absolutely gold, because every time I used to do this in a training flight, I would land, talk to my instructor, and we would have differing memories of how good the maneuver went. This gives you the real data, and it lets you see what really happened. So this goes back to the FlySto's tagline of flying stories you can trust.
So that's it. That's what I do. Now, if you have found a better way to debrief flights, let me know in the comments below. But if you haven't tried this yet, I encourage you to do so. You will be surprised what the actual data shows about your flying.